The Ugly Duckling. It was so beautiful out in the country. It was summer. The oats were still green, but the wheat was turning yellow. Down in the meadow, the grass had been cut and made into haystacks, and there were storks that walked on their long red legs talking Egyptian, because that was the language that had been taught by their mothers. The fields were enclosed by woods, and hidden among them were little lakes and pools. Yes, it certainly was lovely out there in the country. The old castle, with its deep moat surrounding it, lay bathed in sunshine. Between the heavy walls and the edge of the moat, there was a narrow strip of land covered by a whole forest. Their leaves were large, and some of the stalks were so tall that a child could stand upright under them and imagine that he was in the middle of the wild and lonesome woods. Here a duck had built his nest. While she sat waiting for the eggs to hatch, she felt a little sorry for herself because it was taking so long, and hardly anybody came to visit her. The other ducks preferred swimming in the moat to sitting under the dock and gossiping. Finally, the eggs began to crack. Beep, beep, they said one after another. Their egg yolks had become alive and were sticking out their heads. Quack, quack, said their mother. Quack, look around you. And the ducklings did. They glanced at the green world about them, and that was what their mother wanted them to do, for green was good for their eyes. How big the world is, piped the little ones, for they had so much more space to move around in now that they had inside the egg. Quack, do you think this is the whole world? Quacked their mother. The world is much larger than this. It stretches as far as the minister's wheat fields, though I have not been there. Are you all here? The ducks got up and turned around to look at her nest. Oh no, the biggest egg hasn't hatched yet, and I'm so tired of sitting here. I wonder how long it will take, she wailed, and sat down again. What's new? Asked the old duck who had come visiting. One of the eggs is taking so long, complained the mother duckling. It won't crack. But take a look at the others. They are the sweetest little ducklings you have ever seen, and every one of them looks exactly like their father. That scoundrel hasn't come to visit me once. Let me look at the egg that won't hatch, demanded the old duck. I am sure that it is a turkey egg. I was fooled that way once. You can't even imagine what it's like. Turkeys are afraid of the water. I couldn't get them to go into it. I quacked and I nipped them, but nothing helped. Let me see that egg. Yes, it's a turkey egg. Just let it lie there. You go and teach your young ones how to swim. That's my advice. I have sat on it for so long that I guess I can sit a little longer, at least until they get the hay in, replied the mother duck. Suit yourself, said the older duck, and went on. At last the big egg cracked. Peep, peep, said the young one, and tumbled out. He was big and very ugly. The mother duck looked at him. He's awfully big for his age, she said. He doesn't look like any of the others. I wonder if he could be a turkey. Well, we'll soon see. Into the water he will go, even if I have to kick him to make him do it. The next day the weather was gloriously beautiful. The sun shone on the forest, and the mother duck took her whole brood to the moat. Quack, quack, she ordered. One after another, the little ducklings plunged into the water. For a moment their heads disappeared, but then they popped up again, and the little ones floated like so many corks. Their little legs what to do without being told, knew what to do without being told, and all of the new brood swam very nicely, even the ugly one. He's no turkey, mumbled the mother. See how beautifully he used his legs and how straight he holds his head. He is my own child, and when you look closely at him, he is quite handsome. Quack, quack. Follow me, and I'll take you to the hen yard to introduce you to everyone. But stay close to me so that no one steps on you, and look out for the cat. They heard an awful noise when they arrived at the hen house. Two family of ducks had gotten into a fight over the head of an eel. Neither of them got it, for it was swiped by the cat. That is the way of the world, said the mother duck and licked her bill. She would have liked to have the eel's head herself. Walk nicely, she admonished them, and remember to bow to the old duck over there. She is the most aristocratic fowl here. That is why she is so fat and has a red rag tied around one of her legs. That is the highest mark of distinction of a duck. It means so much that she will never be done away with, and all the other fowl and human beings know who she is. Quack, quack. Don't walk, waddle like well brought up ducklings. Keep your feet apart, just as your mother and father have always done. Bow your head and say, quack. And that is what all the other little ducklings did. Other ducks gathered about them and said loudly, What do you want that gang here for? Aren't there enough of us already? Pooh! Look how ugly one of them is. He is the last straw. And one of the ducks flew over and bit the ugly duckling on the neck. Leave him alone, shouted the mother. He hasn't done anyone any harm. He's big and he doesn't look like everyone else, replied the duck who had bitten him. And that's reason enough to beat him. Very good-looking children you have, remarked the duck with the red rag around her leg. All of them are beautiful except one. He didn't turn out very well. I wish you could make him over again. That's not possible, your grace, answered the mother duck. He may not be handsome, but he has good character, and he swims as well as the others, if not a little better. Perhaps he will grow handsomer as he grows older and become a bit smaller. He was in the egg too long, and that is why he doesn't have the right shape. She smothered his neck for a moment and then added, Besides, he is a drake, and it doesn't matter so much what he looks like. He is strong, and I am sure he will be able to take care of himself. Well, the others are nice, said the old duck. Make yourself at home, and if you shall find an eel's head, you may bring it to me. And they were at home. The poor little duckling, who had been the last to hatch and was so ugly, was bitten and pushed and made fun of by the hens and by the other ducks. The poor little duckling did not know where to turn, how he had grieved over his ugliness, and how sad he was. The poor creature was mocked and laughed at by the whole hen yard. That was the first day, and each day that followed was worse than the one before. The poor duckling was chased and mistreated by everyone, even his own sisters and brothers, who quacked again and again. Quack, if only the cat would get you, you ugly thing. Even his mother said, I wish you were far away. The other ducks bit him, and the hens pecked at him. The little girl who came to feed the fowls kicked him. At last the duckling ran away. It flew over the tops of bushes, frightening all the little birds so that they flew up into the air. They too think I'm ugly, thought the duckling, and closed his eyes and kept on running. Finally he came to a great swamp where the wild ducks live, and here he stayed for the night, for he was too tired to go any farther. In this morning he was discovered by the wild ducks. They looked at him, and one of them asked, What kind of bird are you? The ugly duckling bowed in all directions, for he was trying to be as polite as he knew. You're ugly, said the wild ducks, but that was no concern of ours as long as you don't try to marry into our family. The poor duckling wasn't thinking of marriage. All he wanted to do was be allowed to swim among the reeds and drink a little water when he was thirsty. He spent 2 days in the swamp, and then the two geese came, or rather ganders, for they were males. They had been hatched not long ago, therefore they were both frank and bold. Listen, comrade, they said, you are so ugly that we like you. Do you want to migrate with us? Not far from here there is a marsh with some beautiful wild geese live. They are lovely middens, and you are so ugly that you may seek your fortune among them. Come along. Bang, bang! Two shots were heard. Bang, bang! Again the sound of shots, and a flock of wild geese flew up. The whole swamp was surrounded by hunters. From every direction came the awful noise. Some of the hunters had hidden behind the bushes or among the reeds, but others, screened from sight by the leaves, sat on the long, low branches of the trees that had stretched out over the swamp. The blue smoke from the guns lay like a fog over the water and among the trees. Dogs came splashing through the marsh, and they bent and broke their reeds. The poor little duckling was terrified. He was about to tuck his head under his wing in order to hide when he saw the big dog peering at him through the reeds. The dog's tongue hung out of his mouth. Its eyes glistened evilly. It bared its teeth. Splash! It turned away without touching the duckling. Oh, thank God, he sighed. I'm so ugly that even the dog doesn't want to bite me. The little duckling lay as still as he could while the shots whistled through the reeds. Not until the middle of the afternoon did the shooting stop. But the poor little duckling was still so frightened that he waited several hours longer before taking his head out from under his wing. Then he ran as quickly as he could out of the swamp. Across the fields and the meadows he went, but a wind had come by and he had found it hard to make his way against it. Toward the evening he came upon a poor little hut. It was so wretchedly crooked that it looked as if it couldn't make up its mind which way to fall, and that was why it was still standing. The wind was blowing so hard that the poor little duckling had to sit down in order not to be blown away. Suddenly he noticed the door was off its hinges. Making a crack, he squeezed himself through it and was inside. An old woman lived in the hut with her cat and her hen. The cat was called Sunny, and he could both arch his back and purr. Oh, yes, it could also make sparks if you rubbed its fur the wrong way. The hen had very short legs, and that was why she was called Cluck Lowlegs. But she was good at laying eggs, and the old woman loved her as her own child. In the morning, the hen and the cat discovered the duckling. The cat meowed, and the hen clucked. What's going on? Asked the old woman as she looked around. She couldn't see very well, and when she found the duckling, she thought it was a fat, full-grown duck. What a fine catch, she explained. Now we shall have duck eggs, unless it's a drake. We'll give it a try. So the duckling was allowed to stay for 3 weeks on probation, but he laid no eggs. The cat was the master of the house, and the hen was the mistress. They all always referred to themselves as we and the world, for they thought that they were half of the world, and that the better half at that. The duckling thought that he should be allowed to have a different opinion, but the hen did not agree. Can you lay eggs? She demanded. No, answered the duckling. Then keep your mouth shut. And the cat asked, Meow, can you arch your back? Can you purr? Can you make sparks? No. Well, in that case, meow, you have no right to an opinion when sensible people are talking. The duckling was sitting in a corner, and he was in a bad mood. Suddenly he recalled how lovely it could be outside in the fresh air when the sun shone. A great longing to be floating in the water came over the duckling, and he could not help talking about it. What's the matter with you? Asked the hen as soon as she had heard what he had said. You have nothing to do. That is why you get ideas like this. Lay eggs or purr, and such notions will disappear. You have no idea how delightful it is to float in the water and to Dive down into the bottom of the lake and get your head wet, said the duckling. Yes, that certainly does sound amusing, said the hen. You must have gotten mad. Ask the cat. He is the most intelligent being I know. Ask him whether he likes to swim or dive down to the bottom of the lake. Don't take my word for anything. Ask the old woman, who is the cleverest person in the world. Ask her whether she likes to float to get her head all wet. You don't understand me, wailed the duckling. And if I don't understand you, who will? I hope you don't think that you are wiser than the cat or the old woman, not to mention myself. Don't give yourself airs. Thank your Creator for all He has done for you. Aren't you sitting in a warm room among intelligent people whom you could learn something from? While you yourself do nothing but say a lot of nonsense and aren't the least bit amusing. Believe me, that's the truth. And I am only telling you this for your own good. That's how you recognize a true friend. It's someone who is willing to tell you the truth, no matter how unpleasant it is. Now get to work. Lay some eggs, or learn to purr and arch your back. I think I'll go out into the wide world, replied the duckling. Go right ahead, said the hen, and the duckling left. He found a lake where he could float in the water and dive to the bottom. There were other ducks there, but they ignored him because he was so ugly. Autumn came and the leaves turned yellow and brown. Then they fell from the trees. The wind caught them and made them dance. The clouds were heavy with hail and snow. A raven sat on the fence and screeched, "Awk! Awk!" because it was so cold. When just thinking of how cold it was is enough to make one shiver, what a terrible time the duckling must have had. One evening, just as the sun was setting gloriously, a flock of beautiful birds came out from among the rushes. Their feathers were so white that they glistened, and they had long, graceful necks. They were swans. They made a very loud cry. Then they spread their powerful wings. They were flying south to a warmer climate where the lakes were not frozen in the winter. Higher and higher they circled. The ugly duckling turned round and round in the water like a wheel and stretched his neck up toward the sky. He felt a strange longing. He screeched so piercingly that it frightened himself. Oh, he would never forget those beautiful birds, those happy birds. When they were out of sight, the duckling dove down into the water to the bottom of the lake, and when he came up again, he was beside himself. He did not know the name of those birds or where they were going, and yet he felt that he loved them and he had never loved any other creatures. He did not envy them. It did not even occur to him to wish that they were so handsome himself. It did not even occur to him to wish that he was so handsome himself. He would have been happy if the other ducks had let him stay in the henyard. That poor ugly bird. The weather grew colder and colder, and the duckling had to swim round and round in the water to keep just a little space for himself that wasn't frozen. Each night his hole became smaller and smaller. On all sides of him the ice creaked and groaned. The little duckling had to keep his feet constantly in motion so that the last bit of open water wouldn't become ice. At last he was too tired to swim any more. He sat still and the ice closed in around him, and he was frozen fast. Early the next morning a farmer saw him and with his clogs broke the ice to free the duckling. The man put the bird under his arm to take it home to his wife, who brought the duckling back to life. The children wanted to play with him, but the duckling was afraid that they were going to hurt him, so he flapped his wings and flew right into a milk pail. From there he flew into a big bowl of butter and then into a barrel of flour. What a sight he was! The farmer's wife yelled and chased him with a poker. The children laughed and almost fell on top of each other to catch him. And how they screamed. Luckily for the duckling, the door was open and he got out of the house and found a hiding place beneath some bushes in the newly fallen snow. and there he lay so still, as though there were hardly any life left in him. It would be too horrible to tell of the hardship and suffering that Duckling experienced that long winter. It is enough to know that he did survive, and when again the sun shone warmly and the larks began to sing, the duckling was lying among the reeds in the swamp. Spring had come. He spread out his wings to fly, and how strong and powerful they were. Before he knew it, he was far from the swamp and flying above a beautiful garden. The apple trees were blooming, and the lilac bushes stretched their flower covered branches over the water of a winding canal. Everything was so beautiful, so fresh and green. Out of a forest of rushes came three swans. They ruffled their feathers and floated so lightly on the water. The ugly duckling recognized the birds and felt again that strange sadness come over him. I shall fly over to them, those royal birds, and they can hack me to death because I, who am so ugly, dare to approach them. What difference does it make? It is better to be killed by them than bitten by the other ducks and pecked by the hens and kicked by the girl who tends the henyard, or to suffer through the winter. As he lightened on the water and swam toward the magnificent swans, when they saw him, they ruffled their feathers and started to swim in his direction. They were coming to meet him. Kill me, whispered the poor creature, and bent his head humbly, for he waited for death. But what was that he saw in the water? It was his own reflection, and he was no longer an awkward, clumsy, gray bird, so ungainly and so ugly. He was a swan. It does not matter that one had been born in the henyard, as long as one has lain in a swan's egg. He was so thankful that he had known so much want and gone through so much suffering, for it had made him appreciate his present happiness and the loveliness of everything about him all the more. The swans made a circle around him and caressed him with their beaks. Some children came into the garden and they had brought bread with them to feed the swans. The youngest child shouted, Look, there's a new one! All the children joyfully clapped their hands and ran to tell their parents. Cake and bread were cast on the water for the swans. Everyone agreed that the new swan was the most beautiful of them all. The older swans bowed toward him. He felt so shiny and so shy that he hid his head beneath his wings. He was too happy, but not proud, for a kind heart can never be proud. He thought of the time when he had been mocked and persecuted, and now everyone said that he was the most beautiful of the most beautiful birds, and the lilac bushes stretched their branches right down to the water for him. The sun shone so warm and brightly, he ruffled his feathers and raised his slender neck, while out of the joy in his heart he thought, Such happiness I did not dream of when I was the ugly duckling. The end.